This was originally going to be a Valentine's Day video, and well, it's not that anymore. A large part was Elden Ring came out, and I had to experience the lore for myself. And I came away liking it and even finding that the game does a great deal in adding to the conversation about this topic. So, this video is largely about love and marriage, not necessarily the same thing. I'll talk about Dark Souls first, and if I do my job right, I'll segment the video to where it talks about the Elden Ring content. You should listen to the whole thing. It's fun, I promise. Big thanks to Eridan for plugging my channel. I've been very proud and excited to see his success. He deserves it. Big thanks to Sinclair Lore for watching some of my videos and getting me some new subs. I really appreciate it because these largely aren't, shallow viewers. You guys listen to what I say and you respond with your own takes and opinions, and I think they're awesome. I'd encourage anyone to go back to my old videos, and you don't even have to watch the videos. Just go into the comments section and see people's own opinions. And I love how insightful or creative they can be. And for me, that's really exciting as a content creator. That's more rewarding than any Patreon bucks. Anyways, let's get on with the thing. If I had to make a thesis on love and marriage within Dark Souls as a franchise, it's within the idea that love and marriage are extensions of the self, but are able to make the self stronger than they ever could alone. The biggest example of love within Dark Souls is the story of Alva and Zuli. They were both mentioned in Dark Souls 2, and their story reached a conclusion in Dark Souls 3. Alva was a wayfaring knight who went on a search for a cure to Saint Sarada's sickness. He ended up becoming seduced by a witch named Zuli and abandoned his duty. Notable here, and this is my own side canon, I don't think Saint Sarada was originally from Drangleic. I think Saint Sarada and their knights probably ended their journey in Drangleic. There is a grave of saints within Drangleic, and there's another person who holds Alva's armor set, Bradley of the Old Guard. Bradley also has the disc chime, which in the description says was brought here by a visiting saint. Bradley would also resemble much more of a standard knight, and Bradley never relinquished his duty. In fact, Bradley ends up at the throne of want, indicating a similar path to our own in search of a cure. Dark Souls 3, all right, we're back to the normal stuff. Dark Souls 3 goes a step further in an interesting way to inform how Zuli seduced Alva. This is one of the ways you can use one of the later titles to inform the text of a previous, bringing new light to a situation. In Dark Souls 2, there was a domino mask that's said to have been used by Zuli as it discusses her motivations for deceiving Alva. What does the domino mask mean? Could have made a dozen theories for what it was, but in Dark Souls 3, it gives us an answer to what the mask was used for. Dark Souls 3 has the mask in the form of the blindfold mask, and specifically cites its resemblance to a firekeeper crown, but with eye holes for the person to see. So, we can make a story here that Zuli used this mask likely to pretend to be a firekeeper and seduce Alva. After all was lost, Alva would still love her though. And from here, we see another idea that love persists throughout time. Alva and Zuli are two found at the end of time and earth. Their love kept them going, even if it was forged in tragedy. Alva would never stop his search for her, or, for that matter, sinking the spurned that might be Carla of Irithyll Dungeon. With this, it might be clear that Carla is a daughter to Zuli in some way. Carla calls herself a child of the Abyss, and that closely resembles Nashandra and her sisters. So, is it possible that Carla is just a fragment of Manus? Well, she clearly has a mother. There's definitely a possibility that she is a fragment of Manus. But she does have a mother. Dark Edge specifically says that this spell was passed from mother to daughter. Now, does that mean that Zuli herself isn't a fragment of Manus? Or that fragments of Manus have normal moms? I think all that's possible. I also cite possibilities of the humanity that is drawn to the souls of firekeepers. So if we take, for instance, the idea that Zuli faked being a firekeeper, perhaps there was quite a lot of humanity going towards her soul. Possibly that could produce a child of the abyss, or perhaps that there is also a reincarnation with the or Echo or whatever to the witch Beatrice, who specifically traversed the abyss and never made it out. The Manus connection, however, is I think the easiest and most explicit, especially considering the fact that Carla sells pursuers slash affinity. The Manus spell. It was pursuers slash affinity was a spell specifically from Manus. Dark sorcery involves using emotion to impress your will upon darkness and humanity. And for that particular spell, it's an intense feeling of want. Specifically, either love or envy, maybe probably both. What's so important about all of that is Manus's own emotions of love and envy and want as a whole persist for eons after his passing. These lingering feelings go on to influence major events and perhaps even minor events, such as the lives of Zuli and Carla. Going off into that, we look at the actual daughters of Manus. We see a much larger picture of what love and marriage look like. If you've seen my videos before, you would know that basically a way to look at linking the fire is becoming a true monarch. And becoming a true monarch involves self actualization and achieving fulfillment in identity. A big part of this is your own strength and recognizing your role within the world. Acknowledging your agency in making those choices. Part of all of that includes the idea of embracing your shadow. It's very Carl Jung stuff, very just basic, myth stuff. We can see similar aspects in the Dark Chasm of Old, but what's here is seizing the flame and harnessing the dark seems to be the goal of a king, to achieve the glory of fire and the strength of fire while recognizing and taming the shadow of your own will and self. Now, what the fuck did I just say? What does that mean? Perhaps the sort of a way to support what I'm trying to say is to use an example from the game. When you transpose Vendrick's soul, you get multiple weapons. One of them is completely unique and isn't something used to identify with the king in history. It's the king's ultra greatsword and is a portrait of Nishandra. To just quote the sword, only the king knows whether the depiction of the queen is a resentful mockery or an affectionate exaltation. With this item and the description, we learn a lot about Vendrick's own views of Nishandra, and the fact that it comes within his essence about Vendrick himself. No matter what, this is a reflection of Vendrick's heart, but might also be a reflection of Vendrick himself. Nishandra is Vendrick's darkness, figuratively speaking. Literally, she's a shard of Manus, a creature drawn to strength and power. But she encourages Vendrick to grow strong himself. Vendrick's greatest achievement, pillaging the giant's strength, was encouraged, and also I guess seeing the I guess the greatest achievement Vendrick had was seeing within the essence of the soul. Whoops, fucked up that. Anyways, pillaging the giant's strength was encouraged by Nishandra herself. She is enabling Vendrick to find the strength to take the crown, and Vendrick grows strong as she does too. To quote Vendrick, brighter flame, deeper shadow. Uh, for man, ambition is darkness. While Dark Souls is very smart about trying to address overcoming hardships as strength, so too does ambition play a role. How powerful is ambition? We need look no further than the profaned flame, which is forever fueling on the ambition of the abyss. And that ambition is enough to take root within someone like the Pontiff Sullivan. Here, we find Vendrick's true character, his weakness. He cannot bear to link the flame. He cannot bear the weight of a true monarch, because he cannot reconcile his shadow. He loves Nishandra, and she makes him strong. That powerful manifestation of desire is what has given him strength. She did not force him to invade the giants. He went of his own will. Together, they made Drangleic into the kingdom it is. Nishandra was the perfect woman for Vendrick, because he cannot bear to confront Nishandra, he cannot bear to fight her, and he cannot bear to sit on the true throne and embrace her hold on his heart and his being. If he became a monarch, he would almost surely be a dark lord, and he knows he cannot tame that darkness within. Meanwhile, Nishandra wants him as a worthy vessel, for both the flame she covets and herself. When he sees Nishandra, he sees himself. He sees the pride within and he sees the shame. You can see this represented in other monarchs and wives. I'm not going to dwell too long on it, but Alsana also represents the Ivory King's own fears and anxieties. The difference is that Ivory King did meet and understand and confront his fears, his shadow. He willingly accepted Alsana, knowing who she was. Once conquered, his fear was a powerful tool. Alsana proves to be a strong ally and fights against the roaring chaos into eternity. Outside of this idea, but supporting it, we can see the Londor questline of Dark Souls 3 involve us becoming a true monarch for the kingdom and church of Londor. So, like, I mean, I guess it's like a holy emperor deal. I don't know. You have to marry Henri to be considered a true monarch. Henri allows you the extra three dark sigils to draw out your ultimate strength and become the Lord of Hollows. Notable here is that there is an inverse. Instead of a being of fire and light, we are a being of dark in the Londor questline. Our true strength comes from the sigils, holes that ooze out infinite darkness, infinite burden, infinite weight. These obligations, these dark ties enable our true strength. Henri is notably a hollow as well. And she or he, I'm going to keep calling her she, is a noble from Astoran blood. Even though she's not actually from Astora, the place was long ruined beforehand. Her blood has that noble divine lineage, and she often dreams of her own home. And sometimes that's really all you need for identity. When her face is covered, it's a cloth very similar to Guinevere's own fabric, and it takes place in the Dark Moon hallway where we fought Gwendolyn in the first game. It's also the tomb of Gwyn. For me, this marriage and questline is focused on subverting but maintaining the order of the world. Gwyn is the Lord of Cinder, and like when Koth so desperately wanted a Lord of Man, we now have a true ceremonial Lord befitting a Lord of Hollows, not just some guy who walks out of the kiln. The ideas of lordship and kingship have been embraced by the church's ideology. I didn't write this, but as I was saying it, I think it's important to say here. So, like, we're seeing the sigils with the infinite darkness, infinite way, and the marriage of Henri. These are obligations, duties. When you become the Dark Lord, basically you have to make Londor whole. You are indebted to and strengthened by your debts within purpose. So, like, one of the big things people always talk about with Hollows is purpose. The Dark Lord of Hollows has purpose. Purpose bolsters his strength, bolsters his everything, really. Even if it's selfish, because it's probably selfish. In a bit, I'll talk about the seal and the Sword of Avowal, but for now, just keep it in the back of your mind. When you embrace this other half, you ultimately become stronger for it. That's what a relationship can do for you. I've talked at length about identity in these games, but a relationship to another person is such an important aspect to all of identity because a lot of self actualization is about you realizing your place and influence and purpose in the world, and by extension, your place and influence and purpose within other people. All relationships matter, but love matters the most. A relationship of love or marriage with a real partner or other half can allow you to grow far beyond your own strengths. I'd regret not mentioning how lasting love can be in another way. This is a small snippet. In Dark Souls 2, there are puppets, Alkin and Ven, and they are and blah 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 blah. I'm keeping that in. In Dark Souls 2, there are puppets of the kingdoms of Alkin and Ven, and they are animated, and they are propagating the covenants of those two far after the prince and princess of Alkin and Ven are gone. I've stated this before, but I needed to say it because this is the love video, and that is probably the most explicit and purposeful intent in discussing love in Dark Souls, other than Alva and Zuli, I guess. Love and marriage can be twisted in many ugly ways. I'd cite anything related to Mytha, really, because everything related to Mytha is about how that obsession and envy and desire for beauty are not out of real love, but a poisonous lust and want for the self. Mytha is jealous that the king has no interest in her, and so she has a poison that preserves her beauty and animates all these puppets. The covetous is interested in Mytha, and his obsession and simpery, utter simpery, have turned him into a demon who covets. So, with this concept addressed, I'm going to ask a question returning to Vendrick. Do Vendrick and Nishandra love each other, truly? Or did they love what they brought to each other? Did they just want and desire? I think as I ask that question, everyone in their seats, yells at the computer and says, of course, Nishandra didn't love Vendrick. And yeah, that doesn't mean she didn't desire him, though. They both seem to embody want and lust. Vendrick is addressed as the king of want as history unfolds, and Nishandra's image seems pristine at the dawn of Dark Souls 3, judging by the Erithil portrait. I guess what I'm trying to get at here is the question of perhaps these marriages or relationships aren't particularly selfless, at least in most cases. In most cases, the relationships we forge are out of our own desires and wants. How selfless are we really? How much did we fall in love of our own free will? Or did we fall in love because fate deemed it suitable circumstance? Nishandra maintains her thirst, her ambition, long after Vendrick hesitates and abdicates. And Nishandra, after learning this, goes as still as her cursed painting. Nishandra's utter beauty is, in my opinion, comparable to something like Helen of Troy or Cleopatra, the kind of beauty that starts wars. Nishandra, for all her moral failings, doesn't lie to you. She may have other motives, but her honesty is laid bare, even when no one else is honest to you. She's the one who tells you about the ancient dragon's true origin, for instance. She wants you, or anyone for that matter, to become a true king. Take the throne, be a worthy vessel for the flame, and the throne, and the mantle of lord, and that way she can be in the background controlling everything because she wants a simp. That's what she wants. She wants a simp. Gwyn doesn't become a true monarch by marriage, at least not entirely. We are never given text of Gwyn's wife, leading to a lot of random speculation as to the identity or the mothers of or the mother or mothers of his children. I think in large part we could consider ideas of dark wives, or like Velka, for instance. I'd perhaps be like, in my own head canon, I have like a moon goddess that we never see. That sort of informs my opinion, or that Gwyn can make him himself. Who knows? None of that matters. Those marriages weren't the focus for the true throne. The Gwendolyn's mother did not enable him to become a true king. How did Gwyn become a true king in this context? Well, the answer can be found in the Ring City and Filian Nor. Filian Nor is found within the files to have been named at one point wife. I don't think this is meant to imply she was Gwyn's wife. Instead, this bit of text, along with the Church of Filianor and all of the seals of avowal everywhere, lead me to believe she became married to pygmy royalty. Marriage throughout history has been used for political purposes, especially to broker peace. What matters here thematically is to meet the dark. Gwyn had to confront the pygmies with the Dark Soul, and to do that, he offered them a city and a kingdom and his last born daughter. This political marriage, or at least political reconciliation, was how Gwyn confronted the dark and his own shadow. He gave them a place to wait out the end of the world, and that could be a prison or not, depending on your perspective. In all fairness, I think everything in Dark Souls is considered a prison. Even the killing of the first flame is considered a prison by Koth. The pygmy lords don't seem to mind. In large part, there's some exceptions. What matters is throughout the Ring City, we see the signs of avowal as a sort of ongoing reminder of the promise Gwyn has made, and the promise the citizens of the Ring City are making to quote unquote write it out. That's not actually a quote. I just said quote unquote because I put it in the script, and then I did the quote gesture, but you can't like see it. Whatever, you get it. They're at the end of the world to await the end of the world for the to usher in the new age. Even if Gwyn has to let that, or even if Gwyn has tried so desperately to never let that day come. Elden Ring uses this concept of marriage to great effect. In fact, the game is full of symbols regarding commitments, marriage, relationships, and other halves. This is the Elden Ring portion, by the way, in case that wasn't clear. Not all necessarily in the same context, A lot of pairs are twins, for instance. Yet what really matters here are the opposites, sort of yin and yang, act as extensions of each other as a whole. Regression and causality are about meaning and convergence and the relationships between all things. So, a large part of what we've already talked about here. This is as smooth of a transition as I got. And I'm interrupting it by saying I'm going to spoil the plot of this game. I hope you're okay with that. Marriage is seen as a major concept in Elden Ring in a way that wasn't as emphasized before. In the game, Empyreans are meant to eventually herald and represent an incoming age, and their consorts are meant to rule with them. It's simple here. We've got a basic line of repeating patterns. Godfrey is Marika's first Elden Lord. There was at least one Elden Lord before him, but that's not relevant to this conversation. Radigan as Marika's second Elden Lord, and don't worry, we'll get to Radigan. That's its own wall of text. Mog trying to be the consort to Michaela, well, not succeeding, but he's trying really hard. And you being the consort to either Marika as third Elden Lord or Rhaenys consort for the Age of Stars ending. Technically, I'd also say for Praetor Rykard bleh, that he also has a union with the snake god and a personal consort with Tanith, in which by the end of the whole Rykard Tanith thing is wanting to be a vessel for Rykard's god snake rebirth. Rykard's a bit more complicated because instead of a union of marriage or sexuality, it's almost as if these notes of marriage are folded into the idea of the snake as consumption. That is, it's all under the metaphor of eating. All will be family when consumed. Tanith as a character, though, for me, sort of makes the comparisons more conventional and makes me feel comfortable including him here. We could go on about, for instance, vessels like Selen's questline or the puppet stuff, but let's just stick to pairs here. The D twins are most notable for a non marriage example of halves becoming one whole. Fia sort of makes certain angles sexually explicit and makes this more of a sexual game than previous titles, except parts of Bloodborne and parts of Dark Souls 3. Fia wants to bed death. It's a pun, get it? Deathbed companion, and she beds champions, but we only really understand this concept through hugging. Hot, steamy hugging. When Fia beds the Prince of Death, which is Godwin's current occupier within his vessel, um, I guess to explain things, Godwin, when he died, became he died in soul, not body, and what occupied his body after the fact was the Prince of Death. She'll essentially make a child, but the child isn't going to be like a baby. It's going to be a rune, and she becomes a mother to all of those who live in death. The rune is what you will eventually brandish and will use to mend and will define the upcoming age as the rune becomes your own addition to the Elden Ring. When Godfrey has no more foes to match him, Godfrey loses the gold in his eyes. He loses the ambition. He became tarnished, a simple warrior, possibly as he was before in the Law of Regression, named Horalu. He led the tarnished out of the lands between, and they began to suffer through many wars and violence. These hardships forged the tarnished into something special. They forged champions. Marika actively anticipates the return of the tarnished. She is expecting one of you to become Elden Lord. The events of the game have been planned by Marika. This may be a video for another time, but I've speculated with others that Marika wants us to suffer, and by we I mean tarnished, to the point where we find the strength to become Elden Lords. Gideon knows the reality that Marika wants us to suffer, but Gideon doesn't think it's possible to kill a god. So, he assumes that she wants us to suffer eternally. This is due to Gideon's own failings. Primarily, the fact that all of his power is derived from knowledge and collection of knowledge, not actual lived experience through hardship. So that's how he thinks it impossible. He's never lived it himself. He reads it in a book or has somebody tell him that. And also, he tries to foster hardship within others, sort of creating a parallel between him and Marika and Radigan, I guess, with the Radigan being very studious and a scholar. Marika is okay with her children, all of her children, becoming anything. However, Marika warns, The children must find strength, or else they will be sacrificed. With this, I get heavy wine mom vibes trying to kick her kids out to make sure they get a job on their own. I don't know. I just thought I'd mention it here. I'm trying to get all my Elden Ring opinions out because I don't know the next time I'm going to make a fucking video. We'll see what happens. Let's talk about it. Let's fucking open the Radigan box. It's Radigan time, baby. Radigan's history is all kinds of fucked up. I'm not going to claim to know everything or claim anything definitively. This is very early in the lore discourse lifespan, even now. What matters is Radigan was first as a warrior and seemed to have originally shown up in the war against the giants, question mark. I think that's the earliest time we can trace to. And then he began to war with Carian royals before eventually settling the war and marrying Renala. So here we get a marriage of golden rays, and I don't think it's said, but I'd compare it to the sun, in the house of the moon. In my own personal opinion, this is a marriage forged by love, at least to an extent. To Renala herself, this love was almost completely explicit. It seems as if Renala actively loved Radigan. And to Muriel, Muriel's quote as if Radigan's marriage was a vow of love as well. Though it could be for personal gain. I think it's interesting that Radigan kept his original sword Renala gave him upon marriage and instead reforged it for the Golden Order. I think that's important for understanding Radigan's character. I think what defines Radigan are two things. One thing is about to come up, but the other is a primary concept of duty. The seals of both Marika and Radigan indicate duty and vows, and Radigan otherwise seems beholden to the Golden Order to a fault. Now, this is my opinion. To me, there's only two options for what's going on, personally. Either A, Radigan was a nobody champion for the Golden Order, and through the blessing of the Greater Will and Golden Order, was blessed and specifically chosen as a champion to wed, and merge with Marika. And perhaps these marriage unions have similar effects. Who knows? I think this is a very clean explanation. Most will settle on it. I think there's a lot of small details that I don't feel comfortable with. I think this is most supported, however, by Marika's own conversation with Radigan, saying he is not a god yet. It's also cleaner and communicates a lot of these larger ideas I'm saying about forging a relationship, becoming stronger, etc., etc. Like it sort of feeds into the whole video in a much cleaner way and feeds into sort of all of this. But there's a lot of problems. I think there's too many problems. Namely, how much the game wants to communicate other concepts about this relationship. So B, this is the second option. This is what I personally believe right now. A couple weeks after the game has come out, I'm recording this on April 25th, 2022. I think the game wants to suggest Marika either dabbles in mimicry, judging by the veil and the line in regression about mimicry, and probably at some point after it becomes untenable, she separates a part of herself that was her opposite. This is possible. We can see offspring or offshoots exist as separate extensions of the character's will. Specifically, Millicent's role with Melania. She sees that she's related to Melania, and she recognizes herself as kin. And as kin, she realizes she's taken something from Melania, something she needs to return, dignity or whatever it may be. Here, Marika, I'd speculate, discarded the part of herself loyal to the Golden Order. And more importantly, the part of herself that wants to build and grow. What happens is Radigan falls in love with Renala and fosters children. Perhaps, if you're not one for believing in love, we can view this period as a period of seeking strength from the moon. Specifically, perhaps, again, we're in brainstorming session here. Perhaps the goal of the Golden Order / Greater Will / Radigan was to foster a child of strength, specifically a proper Empyrean. Ranni is an Empyrean, and then long after that, he ends up wedding with Marika, and then everything they make together are Empyreans. While I'm not sold on that child idea, I'm trying to say it so like everyone just goes with the idea that was advantageous and there were reasons for Radigan to marry Renala. When Godfrey is driven out of the lands between with his tarnished, Radigan is called back to the capital. I think the second thing that informs the character of Radigan is the law of regression, the need to return home, return to the self he was once part of, and converge. All things yearn to converge. This is what makes me think Radigan has origins with America. Otherwise, what's the secret? Uh, what's the secret when you marry America? America becomes you. Why doesn't Godfrey explore this idea as a secret if that's the case? I think it's more like Radigan felt the call of duty to return and wed America. In their bedchamber, America acknowledges his loyalty to the Golden Order and suggests they unite and converge and become fractured together. That is, in marriage, they are actually fractured. She was anticipating the fracturing of the Elden Ring by this point. This, to me, might indicate that they are now irreconcilable. For even though they are two halves to a whole, now that they've returned to each other, Radigan is too far into being his own person. Their minds and their goals are separated. America wants an Elden Lord. She doesn't seem to want to abandon the system at large, but, there's also a deep part of her that's the other self that wants to still obey the greater will entirely and sort of not break it down. But why does America want to break it down? Perhaps in anticipating everything, America has seen the bigger picture. This video, I'm going to propose what America wants. What I think America wants is change. Let's take the hammer. The hammer comes from the America's hammer, named America's hammer. So this belonged to America, to be clear, and it comes from the land of Newman. America was a Newman. The fact that this is America's hammer might reflect what I'm trying to say at large about Radigan's origin as well. Radigan used, I'm sure he used the hammer to reforge, for instance, possibly. Who knows? I guess. But once she built with the hammer and forged, she breaks it down now. When America uses it, she uses it to break down the Elden Ring. Radigan is trying to restore and rebuild it. You can, sort of look at all of this opposites, the male and the female, all this stuff as sort of alchemical or hermetic references to all that sort of stuff. But for me, what matters with the fractioning is intentional. The tarnished exile was intentional. Her hammer is both a tool to build and destroy. By breaking down the rules of society and the world we live in, we start to suffer. But as it breaks down, it becomes a tool for change and rebuilding. When we have conquered the Elden Beast, we are given a chance to fix a problem. Just one problem. The extra endings are all mending runes. Runes meant to fix the Elden Ring and the Golden Order. Any problem is good. Just one problem. You know, it could be the ugly omens, for instance. When we apply the mending rune of the Fell Curse, it curses everyone and it curses everything for all of time. While that certainly sounds horrifying, especially if you did the Dung Eater quest line, doesn't seem like a lot of happiness, it fixes a problem with the Golden Order. It seems as if when things die in this Golden Order, an ugly or disgraceful death, they're remade in the Erdtree as omens. There's sort of like an omen curse, a sickness, a problem here that sprouts, and then it affects everything down the line, even their children and their children's children, etc., etc. The fix is that when everything is cursed and ugly, nothing is cursed and ugly. The Fell Curse stops being a curse at that point. The curse becomes the order. The curse becomes a blessing of despair. And just as said previously, America wants us to suffer, not in a way that's cruel, but in a way that improves. This curse can be seen as a blessing. And this blessing of despair is the literal according to the ending narration. I'm not wrong here. This is similar when we add the mending rune of the Death Prince, when we incorporate life within death into the order. So that way, the order of the world doesn't have to hide away destined death. You don't have to put it somewhere and make sure it's never found. We don't have to live in a fantasy land where nothing dies and it's fed into the Erdtree and blah, 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 blah. Instead, we can accept death by believing in life within death. Death is restored. Or perhaps the mending rune is meant to solve the fracture problem, period. When Gold Mask learns of the reality between Radigan and Marika, his solution to his solution to this problem, quote unquote, this problem, is the mending rune of the perfect order. This rune is specifically meant to prevent the fickleness of gods, to make the Golden Order a fine, well tuned machine that doesn't depend on the whims of a person or a self, especially when the god is literally of two minds. And I think this whole Gold Mask quest is another reason why I believe Radigan has origins within America, because it doesn't really make sense otherwise, for me at least. The death rune and this rune of perfect order still propagates suffering. One literally incorporates death within the order of the world, and the other is indifferent to any whims. It's just uncaring in both ways. So no matter what, the age sort of improves in America's perspective and does improve on sort of fundamental flaws with what's going on in the order of the world. And I think personally, this is really optimistic. I think the whole improving the age thing is what I took away from the lore of the game. I think Dark Souls is a very cynical perspective. In Dark Souls, the order was oppressive in its totality. Change means nothing because we know things were doomed to repeat. Time and time again in Elden Ring, we are told of different ages and different perspectives, and we discover the reality that the order of the world can change and improve and is flexible in its rules. Roger even says, "Isn't it reassuring? You know, isn't it reassuring that it's able to do that? That the world is capable of changing for the better." This is a much more optimistic game for me, and this game argues boldly, in contrast to Dark Souls or even Bloodborne, that life is worth fighting for. It's worth keeping. The Frenzied Flame is an argument for regression of the highest order to burn everything till we are hot magma within the crucible. But Melina tells us that it's not worth it. There are babies being born, and there are lives that smile within this world. That's worth fighting for, and that's worth rebuilding. Likewise, Miyazaki within interviews has stated that the Erd Tree was meant to represent this living thing that could change to the demands of the world. It was something eternal and strong, but mutable. Did I just go on a big Elden Ring tangent that doesn't have to do with love and marriage? Yeah, I did. I hope it was fine. I think everyone's okay with it. I'm going to leave some ends open here, like the Age of Stars. But I hope all of this conveys the points I was making about marriage, self, will, your relationship to the world and other people. To really come into your own, you have to investigate those relationships. And sometimes the only thing worth fighting for in the world is someone else. Thanks for watching, everybody. And thanks to everyone on screen. I'm trying to decide how to do the channel from here on out. I don't know whether I think there's going to be a second channel for gameplay videos or collaborations with my friend Murph and other Twin Geeks things. I have a podcast that talks about video games and all that stuff, but probably a lot of people aren't interested in that. So I think separating that into another channel will allow there to be less problems, and that way people can just enjoy pure unadulterated lore. You know what I mean? So yeah, let me know what y'all think, and thank you so much for watching.